So before going into some of the highlights of the study, a little bit of background on what this community is. In 2004, I founded something called the Hidden Brain Drain Task Force. Back then, it was just 6 companies committed to the idea that we had to fully realize talent across the divides of gender, race, generation, and geography if we were to forge a prosperous world. Well, since we began just 7 years ago, this task force has grown. We now have 67 major players involved in this work, and we're particularly proud that we continue to grow through difficult times, through world stagnation, or at least some recession in the mature markets. Over these 7 years, with Melinda being very center stage in the development of the intellectual capital, we've done some extraordinary research. We've tangled with off-ramps and on-ramps, trying to figure out how to keep women on the track to success. We've uncovered the different value propositions coming out of Gen Y, Gen X, and Boomers. But we've also done some very interesting new stuff recently. This summer, for instance, we released a report called The Power of Out, which really showed through data why coming out and being in touch with your identity and being able to be proud of who you are makes a huge difference to progression, to earning power, to productivity for gay individuals who are able to be not in the closet in the corporate world. So I think that the range of research we now do is looking at all of the new streams of top talent in the marketplace and figuring out how to retain, sustain, and really accelerate the progression of all groups. So what did we find when we looked at the accomplished women in these markets? And let's start with the most obvious fact. Huge numbers of women in these markets are immensely well educated. And we're not talking about a tiny elite. Somewhere between 15 and 25% of all young women in those college-age cohorts are in college. It's not a tiny elite. It's a lot of women. The other thing, and this was perhaps one of the very surprising findings, aspiration, ambition is fierce. In fact, it's much more exaggerated, much more high-reaching than that in this country. So what's driving these very impressive rates of ambition? Well, first off, if you are Indian or if you're Brazilian, you're surrounded by opportunity. These are economies that are growing, 8, 9, 10% a year. And it's contagious. There's a sense of exhilaration of being part of a watershed moment in these nations which you can be part of and transform your life as your nation is going through its tremendous growth spurt. In China, as we all know, they've had a one-child policy for, 31 years. And as these women described to us, they felt privileged in getting the full weight of their father's ambition being channeled into them for the first time ever. In Brazil, 14% of CEOs in the largest companies are female. In India, the figure is 11%, and of course, back in the US, the figure is a mere 3%. One of the reasons that women don't lose their ambition and actually are able to particularly grow in their careers through the decade of their 30s and not get knocked off track is that childcare is often much less burdensome. 58% of Indian professional women live with their parents or in-laws, meaning that there is all kinds of, in-home assistance of various kinds. The figure in the US is 3%. gives one some sense of the different qualities of the problem.